Welcome to Focus on the Candidates. I'm Cynthia Pula. My guest today is Gary Swing, and Gary is running in the 6th District, Congressional District of Arizona, and he's running as a Green. So, Gary, that's interesting. How long have you been affiliated with the Green Party?
Well, that's a bit of a long story. I first got involved with green organizations way back in 1984 and 1985, before there
Oh,
was a
that's
Green
a
Party in the
while.
United States. So I did get involved as a high school student in the Green Committees of Correspondence, which was an organization preceding the organization of the Green Party as a political party in the United States. Over the years, I was involved in the campus greens at the University of Colorado Boulder campus. I was involved in the Boulder Green Alliance starting in the early 1990s, the Potomac Green Alliance in Washington, D.C. in the late 80s. The Green Party of Colorado was formed back around 1993, I think it was. I was the campaign manager for the first Green Party campaign in Colorado. That was Phil Hufford for governor. Sorry, not campaign manager, campaign treasurer. I ran as a Green candidate for state representative in 1996 in Denver. Over the years, I've been a Green Party candidate 7 times, 4 times in Colorado, 3 times in Arizona. I essentially left the Green Party after 2016. The National Party was taken over by what I would consider to be a hard left authoritarian faction that calls itself eco-socialist. It's a faction that I've never identified with. And in Colorado, where I was for most of my adult life, the state party was completely taken over, and all longtime Green activists were expelled or purged from the state party. I have been somewhat distant from the Green Party since then, and I'm now living in Tucson, where my family lives, and I'm kind of testing the waters to see if I feel like there's a place for someone who supports green values in the Green Party.
So, when you said that people were expelled from the party, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, expelled is probably the wrong word. The correct word is purged. So what happened in the Green Party of Colorado is that an extremist faction took over the party, completely changed the party bylaws, and they banned every former Green Party candidate for statewide or congressional office from voting at Green Party of Colorado meetings. They were banned from attending Green Party meetings. Bylaws were completely changed. Most local chapters were disaffiliated from the state party coercively by the state council, which was run online through a restricted access forum that was heavily censored. And they took away voting rights from more than 99% of registered Green Party members in the state of Colorado. It was a complete takeover of the state party by the faction that called itself eco-socialist, banning anyone who had really been involved in helping to build the Green Party of Colorado from participating in the state party. And so after that, I ended up getting involved in another alternative party called the Unity Party in Colorado and ran for office 3 times with that party. But what happened with the Green Party in Colorado really undermined everything I think that the Green Party is supposed to stand for. The Green Party was founded on a set of values, including nonviolence, ecology, grassroots democracy, and social justice. And for many years, I felt that the Green Party of the United States no longer represents those values. And I consider myself to be what would be called a Kiwi lime green, green on the outside, green on the inside. The Green Party of the United States today is more of a watermelon green party, green on the outside, red on the inside. It's really a front, I think, for socialism, for an authoritarian left version of socialism. I consider myself to be an anti-authoritarian progressive left, but anti-authoritarian rather than authoritarian. And I'd like to see a Green Party that is more of a big tent party that welcomes people from a broader perspective and not just the faction that calls themselves eco-socialist.
So I was aware of the Green Party, of course. I'm in New York, so when Grandpa Munster ran as a Green, that's when I became aware of them. And then in 2000, when Ralph Nader ran, he
Mhm.
ran as a Green, and he did
Right.
fairly well. And over the years, I've seen like Howie Hawkins run for
Mhm.
president, Jill Stein run for president. But I know there's a lot of, in-party fighting, and it seems like they can't get out of that rut.
I think that's fair to say. I've tended to be involved more at the local level with the Green Party, and my involvement with Green Party organizations was either in Washington, D.C. or in Colorado. I lived in both Boulder and in Denver, Colorado at different times. I've not been as involved with the Green Party as an organization in Arizona. I have not particularly been involved with Green Party presidential campaigns, and I think there's way too much focus on presidential election campaigns. Alternative parties tend to have the poorest performances at the highest levels, and yet there's a focus on the highest levels of campaigning.
Mhm.
People tend to want to run for the highest office, whether it's president or U.S. Senate or governor. And yet, the lower you are on the ballot as an alternative party candidate under the winner-take-all system used in the United States, the higher the percentage of the vote that you're likely to get. So, the focus on presidential campaigns, I think, tends to focus on personality, and it develops a kind of a cult of politics, a cult of personality. And the Green Party is supposed to be a decentralized organization. I think it's counterproductive for the Greens to focus particularly on presidential elections as opposed to, say, running candidates for the state legislature or for county office, where they're more likely to be elected or to be taken seriously.
Now, I know Howie Hawkins. I've interviewed him quite a number of times. And each time I interview him, says the same thing about organizing, but I don't see much organizing done. And I've met Jill Stein a couple of times, and you know, I liked her stance on student loan, and I like Howie's stance on student loan, but they just can't seem to get any traction.
That's right. Typically, alternative party presidential candidates get maybe 1% of the vote, 2% of the vote. Green Party candidates in most elections have gotten less than that. Ralph Nader did better than other Green Party candidates running for president, although he was never actually a member of the Green Party. He's a lifelong independent. The Green Party first ran him as their nominee for president in 1996 and then again in 2000. In 1996, perhaps a bit ironically now, I did not support Ralph Nader for president. I was an elector for Mary Cal Hollis, who was then the Socialist Party candidate for president. And she was also a member of the Green Party of Colorado at the time. So I knew Mary Cal Hollis personally, and I thought she had the best platform for president. Although I've personally never considered myself a socialist, I tend to look at what the candidates stand for. And anymore, I only vote for people I know personally. Even at the presidential level, if I don't know someone personally and trust them and feel that they're going to represent the views and the values that I stand for, I don't really get involved in those campaigns. I did vote for Jill Stein in 2012 and 2016. I did not vote for her last year. Last year I voted for Cornel West and I helped him get on the ballot in Colorado. And in 2020, I helped the second place candidate for the Green Party's presidential nomination, Dario Hunter, get on the ballot in Colorado as a Progressive Party candidate. But I've tended to keep my distance from Green Party presidential campaigns.
Mm. So, I remember in 2000, they were blaming Ralph Nader for Gore not winning in Florida. Remember that?
I remember that. That's something that's been held against the Green Party by the Democrats for many, many years, and it's nonsense. The Supreme Court stopped the election count in Florida. Now, a consortium of media outlets did complete the vote count in Florida, and they found that Al Gore did win the vote count in Florida. Al Gore won both the popular vote, and he would have won the Electoral College vote if the Supreme Court had not stopped the vote count. Now, it's also been pointed out by Greens over the years that there are many Democrats who did not come out to vote or who voted across party lines, and yet the Democrats want to blame Ralph Nader for spoiling the 2000 election. That has never been true. It's nonsense. The idea of the spoiler in elections is highly exaggerated in the United States. It's extremely rare for someone to be in a position as an alternative party candidate to legitimately be seen as a so-called spoiler in an election. Now, there's a couple of problems with the whole idea of the spoiler. One is that no one owes their vote to the Democrats or to the Republicans. The vote is individual. Each person can vote according to their conscience. No one votes for an alternative party candidate if they think people only vote for alternative party candidates because that candidate better represents their values than a major party candidate does. So nobody for running as an alternative party candidate steals votes from a major party candidate. It's the opposite. Major party candidates steal votes from alternative party candidates because alternative party candidates are people that get votes based on strong feelings for those candidates. The idea that you need a majority or a plurality of the vote tends to discourage people from voting for alternative party candidates because they're afraid that their least favorite candidate will be elected by voting for an
Now,
alternative.
when you say that you're going to vote third party, and when you tell your friends you're going to vote third party, they always say, well, that means so and so is going to win. And it's
Right,
like they're discouraging people to vote their conscience and third party.
right. Personally, I have not voted for a Democrat or a Republican nominee for Congress or for president since 1992. I once voted
Wow.
I once voted for Bill Clinton for president just because I thought George Bush was so horrible and the Persian Gulf massacre was such a horrible crime against humanity that even though I knew Clinton was a horrible candidate, I voted for him because I thought Bush was so bad. And then Clinton took office, and I thought he was just as bad as Bush was. So since then, I've never voted for a major party nominee for federal office.
So if you're not very happy with the Greens, what third parties did you vote for all these years?
I tend to vote for not third parties, but maybe fifth, sixth, or seventh parties.
Okay.
So I voted for more obscure parties than the Green Party. I voted, obviously, back in 1996, I voted for the Socialist Party, even though I don't call myself a socialist. In 2000, I voted for the Natural Law Party candidate for president. In 2004, I declared myself an anarchist and canceled my voter registration. 2008, I voted Pacifist Party. 2012 and 16, Green Party. 2020, Progressive. And 2024, Unity Party.
Wow. So I know that each election cycle, the presidential Green candidate gets in the neighborhood of 5%. Am I correct?
That's actually not correct. The Green Party has never reached 5% of the vote for president. It's a goal that the Greens have talked about since at least 1996. But if you look at the history of alternative party voting in the United States for president, it's virtually impossible for a progressive alternative party candidate for president to get 5% of the vote nationwide. It's not going to happen. The Greens focus on it because they say that if they get 5% of the vote for president, they'll get some federal funding for the next election. But it's not a realistic goal. It's misleading Green Party activists to say that the goal is 5% of the vote for president. There's another argument that will help with ballot access in the future. And I've heard time and again that 5% of the vote for president will get the Green Party ballot access nationwide. That's not true. Election laws are set at the state basis. And in some states, it's true that party status would be continued by getting a certain percentage for president, but often those laws are based on a certain percentage of the vote for any statewide office. And let's say you run a candidate for attorney general, which usually has to be a licensed attorney, or you run for secretary of state, or you run for, say, an education office that's statewide, or state treasurer. You're likely to get a much higher percentage of the vote than a candidate for president will. In fact, there are only 3 states in the United States where an alternative party is required to run a candidate for president in order to maintain ballot status as a recognized political party. That's New York, where the Greens failed to get on the ballot in the last 2 presidential elections.
And do you know what that is?
Yes, the state of New York a few years ago passed a new ballot access law requiring that alternative parties get at least 5% of the vote for president or for governor, which was the previous rule, in order to maintain their ballot status. So New York is a state where the Green Party has been active, but the Green Party failed to get on the ballot for the last 2 presidential elections in New York. I think the other 2 states are Kentucky and Iowa, where the Green Party is not active.
Well, I'm in New York, and the reason why they did not get on the ballot is because Cuomo raised the threshold from 15,000 signatures to
Right.
45,000 signatures within like a month's time, and
Right.
that's virtually impossible.
Yes,
And he didn't want third parties running in New York State, and the legislature went along with it.
that's right. The United States has some of the worst ballot access laws of any country for alternative party candidates to get on the ballot or for independents. That's a barrier that keeps a lot of alternative party and independent candidates from even getting through the gate of participating in the election system in the United States. The biggest barrier to alternative parties being successful in the United States is the voting system itself. The fact that the United States uses winner-take-all elections in single-member districts. So there are 95 countries that elect their national parliaments by some form of proportional representation. So each party gets seats in the parliament in proportion to the party's share of the votes.
Mhm.
There are 130 countries that use either proportional representation or a hybrid system that combines some proportional voting with some district seats. I think there are about 55 countries that use a winner-take-all voting system like the United States does, and those are mostly former colonies of Great Britain. So if you want to have successful alternative parties, you really need to change the voting system. Get rid of single-member districts and elect members of Congress from multi-member districts by proportional voting method, which can be either the single transferable vote, where you rank candidates in multiple member districts, not in single member districts, or you use a party list system so that each party gets their fair share of representation in government. I tend not to use the term third party because there are way more than 3 parties. The term third party suggests that there are only 2 legitimate parties. We should have at least 8 parties in government, not just 2. And yet, not a single candidate representing an alternative party has been elected to Congress since 1970. And we should have... 1970 was the last time someone was on the ballot just with an alternative party ballot line. That was a conservative party in New York. It was William F. Buckley's brother who ran as a conservative party candidate for U.S. Senate in New York. And he was the last candidate of an alternative party or third party who was elected to Congress. And that's 55 years ago, 56 years now. We should have more than 30 members of the Green Party in the U.S. House of Representatives. There are more than 7,300 members of state legislatures right now. The 3rd and 4th largest parties in the United States have no one elected as members of their party to any state legislature seat in the United States. The Green Party is the 4th largest political party generally in the United States. Libertarians are the 3rd largest party. and yet neither of them have ever elected a member of Congress or anyone to statewide office. The Greens have elected in the past a handful of people to state legislature seats, but every candidate who was elected as a Green to the state legislature later left the Green Party. Only one person ever completed a single term as a Green Party state legislature, John Eder in Maine, who was reelected, served 2 full terms as a Green Party candidate. And then later he became a Republican, and he's now a Republican member of Maine state legislature.
Wow.
MAGA Republican conservative.
Wow.
And he's the only Green who has ever served a full term in a state legislature in the United States. The Green Party has elected members of national parliaments in at least 30 countries, largely due to the use of party list systems of proportional representation, which we've never used in the United States. And there are members of the Green Party in the European Parliament. Greens have run in more than 90 countries around the world. And yet in the United States, we have something like 169 members of the Green Party elected to local, mostly nonpartisan offices around the entire country out of more than 519,000 offices. So the Green Party tells people how many people they've elected, how many elections they've won, but without the context. If you put it in context, the Green Party, unfortunately, is a footnote. It's statistically insignificant in the United States. And yet the Green Party has been successful around the world. The Green Party participates in coalition governments in European countries. They have a significant representation in the European Parliament. But in the United States, we talk about building the Green Party up to the point where we can elect people to the state legislature and then to higher offices. But it doesn't work. We don't get candidates elected to partisan offices in any significant number under a single member district winner-take-all election system. If we want the Green Party to succeed, or other parties, libertarians, Solidarity Party, whatever party it might be, you need to change the voting system. And that is a tall ask. We're stuck with a political system created in the 18th century in secret by a handful of white male, predominantly slaveholders, who designed a system to keep themselves in power while excluding 94% of the population from representation in government. We're still operating under that system today. We need a modern system of government, decentralization, get rid of the system where we have an imperial presidency, who we've seen that go to extremes under the Trump administration, where Trump is acting like a dictator, but his party controls both houses of Congress. They control the Supreme Court, the White House, the majority of governor's offices, and the majority of state legislatures. And they're acting like the president can do anything he wants to.
And he has been.
And he has been, right. So we have an imperial presidency. The office of the president has been abused by both parties to usurp authority from Congress. And it's getting worse and worse. And we've seen it go to an extreme with the Trump regime. A lot of countries use a parliamentary system. So under the parliamentary system, you have a prime minister or head of state who is chosen by democratically elected members of their parliament. So the prime minister can be removed at any time on a vote of no confidence. Usually the authority of the prime minister is strictly limited. And I suggest that that would be a much better system for the United States, especially in light of what we're seeing now with the abuse of the office. The president should never have as much authority as they do now.
So on the local level, city, local races, what percentage nationwide is there a Green representing their district?
Wow, it would be less than 0.1%. It's really small. The Greens do run for some small offices, but relative to the number of such offices that exist in the country, it's really insignificant. And of course, most city council races, most mayoral races, school boards, things like that, are nonpartisan, so you don't see the party label on the ballot. Even among the handful of seats that the Greens hold in the United States, most of those candidates were not elected with the name Green Party on the ballot. So they may report themselves to the Green Party of the United States as Green Party candidates, but often they don't mention the Green Party in their campaigns, and voters don't see that they are Green Party candidates. So when you hear criticism that, well, why don't the Greens run for small local offices? Well, yes, they do, but relative to the number of such offices that exist, it's tiny. And second of all, generally the voter doesn't even know that they're Greens.
Really?
Yeah. So the Green
Wow.
Party is very small compared to the political landscape in the United States.
But Howie Hawkins and Jill Stein were pretty visible candidates, but they didn't get much traction.
That's right. Jill Stein just topped out with about 1% of the vote in 2016. Ralph Nader got, I think, somewhere between 2 and 3% of the vote in the year 2000. Howie Hawkins got a fraction of a percent. He also was running in an election year when COVID happened. The
Right.
Democrats did everything they could to keep Green Party candidates off the ballot through lawsuits, through changes in election laws, restricting ballot access. And at the same time, people were being advised to shelter in place and avoid crowds, socially distant. And if you have to gather 1 million petition signatures during a pandemic, that's just not going to work.
Right.
So it's understandable that under a situation like that, Green Party visibility declined. There is a role to be played by presidential candidates in getting media attention, because the media will give some level of attention to candidates who are running for national office. But I think that the emphasis has been misplaced by focusing on presidential campaigns. There have been some ideas in the past about having Green presidential candidates focus in states where the state is dominated by one political party or another, so there wouldn't be a so-called spoiler in that state. I don't really have much sympathy for the idea of the spoiler argument, but I think there would be an argument for a Green states strategy, to have Green presidential candidates focus on states where Greens are actively organized as a political party in the state and where they have candidates who are running down ballot. In states like Wyoming, where you need a large number of petition signatures relative to the population, and the Greens have never been on the ballot with the label Green Party, it doesn't make sense to me to spend the party's resources going to petition in a state where there are no Green Party candidates running for state or local office, and where there's no effective Green Party organization. So I think there is a role to be played for Green presidential candidates in getting attention in states where the Greens are running down ballot. So in Arizona is a state where the Greens will be on the ballot. Maine is a state where Greens are on the ballot. Connecticut. There are some states where the Green Party is fairly well organized relative to other states. But to go out and try to get on the ballot nationwide when you just don't have the resources and you don't have the organizational backing to run local campaigns,
Mhm.
I think that's misplacing resources.
I read a Substack today in which the author said that the 25th Amendment should be, invoked towards Bush. And I'm sorry, towards Trump. And I'm thinking the 25th Amendment, that's not going to change anything. The system is still going to be the same, even if he does leave office. So it has to be a complete, realignment. What do you see? How do you see that happening?
The problem with the 25th Amendment is that you need the vice president to go along with it and the majority of the cabinet. The problem with impeachment and conviction is that you need a majority in the U.S. House of Representatives and 2/3 majority in the Senate to convict and remove a president from office. And then you have all of his cronies who are supporting the same line all the way down. There's a line of succession of 18 people, And you'd have to remove all 18 of the people in the order of succession in order to have any possibility of a sane government coming to the United States. We're stuck with a really bad system. Right now, the Republicans hold a majority in both houses of Congress. In order to remove Trump or any of his cronies from office, you need 2/3 of the vote in the Senate. And that means you need to have 20 Republicans in the Senate vote to remove them from office. And the party so far has mostly been lockstep behind Trump in every crazy thing that he's doing. So I've seen it said before that if people are concerned about who is the president, that means the office has too much power. Regardless of who is in the office simply has too much power, and it should not. So the office needs to be reined in, not just the person in the office. And I don't know how you get Congress to say this is not okay. We fight them through the courts. We fight them through the state legislatures. We fight them through governor's offices. We fight them in the streets. But you have to take that authority away from the office. You have to decentralize authority. That's critical. And you have to have a government that has laws and respect for individual rights. You can't just allow an oppressive regime to get away with anything they want. You can't just vote away people's human rights. And that's the situation we have right now, is that we have a government that is completely out of control, led by a party that is, it's just absolutely fascist. The Republican Party began as a more progressive political party that wanted the abolition of slavery, that supported women's rights. It was Republicans originally who supported the Kellogg-Briand Pact, outlawing war as a tool of foreign policy. And yet, over the decades, throughout U.S. history, you've seen a shift where the Democrats and Republicans essentially switched places. And now the Republicans are absolutely opposed to civil rights. The Republicans are absolutely for global military imperialism. And the Democrats have gone along with military imperialism. But there's also this idea that there's no difference between the two major parties. And I don't see that as being true, especially now. We've talked in the past about voting for the lesser of two evils. And I've said that I see the Republican Party as being absolutely evil. The Democratic Party is not necessarily any less evil than the Republican Party, because the Democrats, the establishment Democrats, still support genocide, they support military imperialism. But on other issues, there's a difference. Democrats tend to be more supportive of civil liberties, of environmental issues, domestically in the United States. Democrats tend to be more environmentally conscious. The Democrats also, I see as a big tent party. There is a faction of the Democratic Party that's more progressive. And then there's an establishment for the Democrats that is quite conservative. The visible political spectrum in the United States is largely right-wing authoritarian. The Republicans are absolutely right-wing authoritarian. Today, it's absolutely fascist. Today's Republican Party has almost nothing in common with the original Republican Party. We've had a huge shift in where the Republicans are in the United States. Now it's an extremist organization. And we really can't cooperate with them.
I don't think diehard Republicans, um, they don't buy that theory.
Mhm.
They, you know?
Right. Well, there's a difference between Republican with a small r and Republican with a big R. The Republican Party is corrupt, authoritarian, it's racist. But Republican, the word Republican, signifies someone who supports a representative government based on constitutional law and respect for the rights of individuals. And I see nothing Republican about the Republican Party today in terms of their elected leadership at the national level, in Congress and presidential campaigns, and very little at the state level.
Mm. So I'm sure that you've come across a lot of people who um, label themselves as green. Do
Mhm.
they adhere to what you're saying?
Well, I see myself now as testing the waters to see if I feel like there's any place to be green in the Green Party of the United States. And I don't know, I don't know of any Greens running for federal office in the United States today that I would see as Greens. And I'm I'm discouraged about the direction and the messaging of the Green Party today. I have I have submitted candidate questionnaires to the Green Congressional Campaign Committee and to the Green Party of Arizona, telling them what I stand for, what my messaging is. I'm I'm going at least through the process of, um, of participating in the system that they've set up. Election laws, as I said, are set at the state level. There is a process in Arizona, at least, where the Greens have a primary. The party cannot absolutely control who runs on the party's line. Anyone who's legally qualified can register as a candidate for the Green Party of Arizona primary if they live in the district, the state, if they meet residency requirements, age requirements, whatever. The only way to prevent someone from running on a party's line in Arizona is to defeat them with another candidate in a primary election. So what I'm doing now is I have filed the initial paperwork to be a Green Party candidate in Arizona's 6th congressional district. And I encourage other candidates to run for other offices or even to run for the same office. The Greens have access in Arizona right now to run dozens of candidates for congressional offices, for statewide offices, for the state legislature. The Greens could have 20 or more candidates on the ballot next year in Arizona alone. There's a discussion nationally about running at least 250 Green Party candidates for Congress this year for the 250th anniversary of the United States. That's something that I support. I encourage people to run, to get your message out, to take a stand for what you believe in. And you can do that through the Green Party. You can do it through another party, Libertarians, Constitution Party, which is very right-wing, the Solidarity Party, which bills itself as consistently pro-life, anti-war, anti-abortion. I'm pro-choice. But there are a number of alternative parties. And in Arizona, the Green Party does have ballot access right now for state and federal offices. Anyone can file as a write-in candidate if they're legally qualified for the Green Party primary in 2026. And the candidate with the most write-in votes or the most total votes in the primary, whether you petition on or you run as a write-in candidate, the candidate with the most primary votes will go on to the general election ballot with the Green Party label. Now, there's a history of what they call so-called sham candidates in Arizona. That is candidates who run on the Green Party's ballot line but do not have the endorsement of the Green Party. Sometimes candidates seek the Green Party's endorsement but don't get it. Other times candidates just run on the Green Party's ballot line and have nothing to do with the Green Party. So anyone can run through that process. And there will be candidates who don't have the Green Party's endorsement who are on the Green Party's ballot line. I don't know what will happen in my race. I'm providing information to the Green Party about where I stand, what my issues are, what my background is. They may or may not run someone against me in a primary election. I know there will be Green candidates in other districts who absolutely aren't Greens at all in any sense and don't have anything to do with the state party. We'll have a gubernatorial race which is going to be contentious because there are Green candidates who aren't involved in the Green Party and pretty much oppose anything the Green Party stands for, who are running for the Green race for governor. Again, people tend to run for the highest offices. That's going to be the highest office on the ballot this year. And if the Greens get 5% of the vote for governor in Arizona, they qualify as an ongoing, continuing political party in the state. So the Green Party of Arizona will definitely have an endorsed candidate. I don't know who that's going to be for the governor's race. But people who are registered members of the Arizona Green Party and dues-paying members can go to a candidate endorsement meeting in the election year, and they can vote to either endorse, not endorse, or actively oppose a candidate for any given office. So there is a process for the Arizona Green Party to say these candidates are candidates who support what we stand for. These candidates we don't support, and these other candidates, well, they're doing their own thing, and we're remaining neutral. For the state legislature, you have to live in the district for at least 5 years. So it's harder to recruit candidates for lower levels where you have a residency requirement. For Congress, Arizona has 9 congressional races up this year. Anyone who lives anywhere in the state can legally file as a candidate for any congressional district in the state. You don't need to live in the district to run for a district for Congress. That's the only office where you can live outside of the district, but still in the state and still run for that office. So I think I would like to see the Green Party nominate candidates for all 9 congressional districts in Arizona in 2026. I think that's quite feasible. And there will be candidates for statewide office. I'm sure there will be some candidates running for the state legislature, but you have to live in the district again for that.
Mhm. But you're talking just your state.
Right.
What about, other states as well?
Every state sets their own ballot access laws. So it's important for people to understand the election laws in their state and what the process is for their party, for how they get on the ballot. Do they run in a primary? Do they run in a general election? Do they get nominated by a party assembly? Do they petition onto the ballot? What are the petition signature requirements to get on the ballot? So different states have different levels of difficulty in getting on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
I would want to understand my state's ballot access laws before I consider running for office and what office I'm going to run for and what party I'm going to run for. In some states, I think it makes more sense for candidates who believe in green values to run as a Democrat or as an independent. In some states, it makes sense to run as a Green Party candidate. If you want to get elected, frankly, running as an alternative party candidate is not the best path. If you want to use it as a platform, as a message, to be an anti-establishment candidate, to say, I totally oppose the political system that exists in the United States, then running as an alternative party candidate or an independent does provide a legitimate platform. But in some states, the ballot access laws are just so ridiculous that you won't get on the ballot unless you have a lot of money behind you. Mm-hmm. So it's important to understand what the process is. Do you have to go through a caucus system? Do you have to go through a state convention? Do you petition? And sometimes that's very, very difficult. And I think you'll tend to get farther with the same message, unfortunately, running as a Democrat under our system than running as a Green. Now, I would like to see the Green Party succeed in the United States, but I don't really see a path forward to it under the existing system. And I was involved with the Green Party for many years, and I'm disappointed in the direction of the Green Party in the United States today. I think it's been more successful in European countries, but we need to change the system. We need fundamental, systematic reform to abolish the U.S. Senate, which doesn't represent people, it represents states, and have a Congress that's elected proportionally, so everyone gets fair representation in proportion to their share of the vote. Adopt proportional representation at the state level for state legislatures. Then you can have 8 parties in the state legislature, 8 parties in Congress, and everyone gets their fair share of representation. But under the system right now, it's extremely difficult to break into a closed system. Last year, last congressional election, 2024, 97% of incumbents running for re-election to the U.S. House of Representatives were re-elected. Nearly all incumbents are re-elected. Almost all congressional districts, legislative districts, other offices, you know which party is going to be elected before you know who the candidates are. Most districts, most states are dominated by a single party. So the demographics of the district determine the outcome, even without knowing who the candidates are.
It was gerrymandered that way.
Gerrymandering is intrinsic to single-member districts and a winner-take-all voting system. There's almost always one dominant party. Very few districts are even competitive between 2 parties. Those are the so-called swing districts. there's only a handful of so-called swing districts in Congress. The district that I filed for, Arizona's 6th congressional district, is one of those swing districts. In 2024, the Republican incumbent, Juan Ciscomani, got 50.0% of the vote in the district where I'm running. The Democrat got 47.5% of the vote. The Green got 2.5% of the vote. So a lot of people were concerned about the Greens being a spoiler. About $37 million was spent for or against the major party nominees for Arizona's 6th congressional district in 2024. Most of that money came from out of the district and out of the state. A lot of that money came from outside interest groups spending money on ads to lobby for or against one of the major party nominees. I don't know if the Green Party candidate spent any money at all. I wouldn't be surprised if $40 million is spent on this congressional election this year. I plan to spend $0, 0 cents. And I expect Democrats to harass me and try to intimidate me and tell me I should withdraw because I could be a spoiler. Well, part of the reason I'm running, part of the reason I'm filing, is to create the perception that I might be a spoiler for the Democrats. The front runner for the Democratic nomination right now, Joanna Mendoza, has a campaign website that has no campaign issues on it whatsoever. She's just asking for money. She has a multi-million-dollar campaign already. Her campaign website has a photograph of her wearing a Marine Corps uniform, holding a baby, wearing a military uniform. I'm involved in the Green Party rather than the Democratic Party, such as my involvement is, primarily because I'm anti-war. So I see the frontrunner for the Democratic nomination going all out in support of military imagery with her campaign and no substance. The United States has the most extensive military empire in human history. There are about 900 military bases around the world in, I think, something like 90 countries. The U.S. has a military budget that's close to $1 trillion now. Trump wants to increase that to $1.5 trillion. The U.S. represents 4% of the world's population and 40% of the world's military budget. The U.S. military budget is already as big as the next 16 countries combined. U.S. military intervention in other countries since the end of World War II has been responsible for the deaths of an estimated 20 million people in 37 countries between the end of World War II and 9/11, and more than 5 million more deaths since 9/11. I am absolutely opposed to that. The U.S. should restrict its military to non-offensive defense of U.S. territory. I want to cut the military budget by at least 90%, shut down all foreign military bases. The United States should stop investing in war and start investing in human needs, universal health care, ending hunger around the world, supporting civil rights, supporting human rights. We need to get rid of the system in the United Nations where they have permanent members on the Security Council with veto power. Nuclear weapons have been banned under international law, and yet the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council with veto power are countries with illegal arsenals of nuclear weapons. So we need a better system that's focused on human rights, environmental sustainability, and fair representation in government. We need a real democratic republic where everyone gets fair representation that's based on environmental sustainability and respect for civil liberties. And right now, we have a system in place where power is centralized, it's corrupt, it's authoritarian, and we're still stuck with an 18th century political system. The United States is a democratic backwater in the world. And we have a government that has supported repressive regimes around the world. It supported authoritarian governments in foreign countries. And it's time to stop all that. We need to respect human rights. And that means a complete change of the political system in this country.
Wow, I have really enjoyed this conversation.
Well, thank you, Cynthia. I appreciate it.
Your intellect is overwhelming. It really is. So I'd love to keep in touch with you, and you could kind of like tell me from your perspective what's going on. And, when things come up in the news, I'd love to have you back on to give a perspective that people might not have. Would you be okay with that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great. So you've been listening to Gary Swing, and he's running for Congress in Arizona. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Focus on the Candidates. If you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a wonderful evening.